Hello and welcome back to the Surfer's Library, proudly presented by Hillsborough Surf Club. I'm Billy Jack, your guide through the pages of surf history, culture, and legends. Today I'll be reading from John Severson's 1964 book, Modern Surfing Around the World, specifically Part 1. Surfing Today. Surfing is a sport of riding waves. It's not only a sport, it's an art, the art of balancing on a board of polyurethane foam covered with fiberglass and resin while sliding down or across the face of a shorebound wave. It sounds simple and looks even simpler. But as a beginner, your first attempts are usually met with bitter frustration. You'll battle the slippery glass surface of the surfboard in an attempt to merely lie upon it. A few minutes of paddling assure you that you have muscles you've never used before, and that you'll never be able to use again. An approaching wave of a few feet towers and crashes down, tearing the board away from your wrench-like grip. You swim. The struggle to shore leaves you exhausted but determined to get even. Depending on your balance and relaxation, plus a basic knowledge of the fundamentals of surfing, success should be yours sometime the first day. A swell mounts behind you and appears over your shoulder to be already breaking. You scratch towards the shore with all your power until you feel yourself being lifted by the onrushing wave. Still paddling, you feel the board gathering momentum and suddenly, you're no longer going up but hurtling directly toward the bottom at breakneck speed. Carefully you push up with your hands and at the same time bring yourself to a kneeling and then crouching position. Wobbling, you struggle to raise yourself to an erect position and all of a sudden you realize you are standing. You've mastered the ocean. It's a flying sensation, and you're actually surfing. The tip of your board catches a chop and continues in a downward motion, beneath the surface and directly toward the bottom. Off the front of the board you fly in a ridiculous clown-like mid-air run, and with a splat you're swimming again. But you've had your taste. You've been teased with the momentary thrill of your first ride, and you're on the way. You've got a surfboard on your back. Once you've successfully mastered the basic skills of standing on a surfboard, you're surfer for life. You never look at a wave again without visually exploiting the possibilities of riding that wave. And as you look around, you realize that you are not alone. The fraternity of surfboard riders and surfers is growing each year, and what used to be a desolate beach is now someone's favorite surf spot. An even closer look will reveal that not all surfers ride surfboards. There are quite a number of different methods of riding the surf, and each method has its own group of devoted followers who will swear and argue the point that their particular type of surfing is the only way. The popular ways of riding waves include surfboarding, mat surfing with an air-inflated rubber mattress, bellyboarding, pipe-boarding, riding kayaks, canoes, and low-powered craft, and also body surfing. All these methods of surfing rely on the same principle of catching waves. The surfer must gain speed or forward motion through paddling or swimming ahead of the approaching wave. As the wave moves beneath the surfer, his speed starts him gliding down the face of the wave rather than slipping over the back as the wave passes by. What makes this sport thrilling and why are thousands of new surfers appearing on the scene each year? The answer is simple. Surfing is one of the great sports. It's testing yourself against nature and the elements and harnessing, even if only for a few moments, the tremendous power of the ocean. In surfing, you merge with the wave. It's like skydiving or bullfighting or mountain climbing, where you name the degree of danger that you want to encounter. In the big surf, you can come as close to danger and death as you want. It's up to you. And each year, surfers tackle waves from 20 to 30 feet with only one purpose: to make the surf or beat the break, to take that hair-raising plummet down the face of tons of moving water and hear the thundering crash as the wave breaks only feet behind you, to feel the solidness of the board under your feet as you glide out of the wave away from the break, knowing that you've escaped and attained victory. These same exhilarating thrills are dished up in almost any size of surf, and understandably, the small surf has a greater percentage of followers. There are a few surfers who ride only the big surf, a small number who ride both the big surf and the small surf, and a great devoted band of hot doggers who exploit all possibilities of performance in the small surf. Many girls surf and surf well. In each surfing contest, there is always a women's or girls' division, usually well represented by females up on the latest styles of hot dogging and performing. And as in any sport, surfing has its neophytes, known as kooks. They are poor, blundering, in-the-way learners or just plain not-with-it surfers. For years, surfing was thought of as a Hawaiian sport, with Waikiki the surfing capital of the world. Now the picture has changed, with the major portion of the world's surfers coming from and residing in California. Other surfing capitals include Australia, Hawaii, New Zealand, the east coast of the United States, France, Mexico, Peru, and South Africa. Surfing is getting started or being practiced in a number of other spots throughout the world. If the growth continues, surfing may eventually take its place as one of the top sports, and possibly even become an Olympic event. 2. How it all started. Although surfing is considered a new sport, it's actually an old one experiencing a renaissance. It is generally believed that the ancient Polynesians were the first to surf and introduced surfing to the Hawaiian Islands. Peruvian artifacts show that the Incas were also surf-conscious and that they practiced the sport of surfing on reed mats in the surf of Miraflores, near Lima, where surfing was again introduced in the 1940s by Carlos Dogni, a Peruvian, upon his return from a visit to Hawaii. There is a remote possibility that the idea of surfing spread from Peru on rafts such as the Kon-Tiki, but more probable that if South Americans did arrive with the idea, the Polynesians were already one step ahead of them. There is little written material on the early surfing in Hawaii, although it is known that when Captain Cook arrived in the islands in 1778, it was at its zenith. After the arrival of the missionaries and the burdensome clothing that they imposed on the Hawaiians, surfing declined until about the 1880s, and it had almost disappeared. What information is available has established the fact that betting being very common among the old Hawaiians, great contests were held with the winner walking off with anything from a few pigs to a human life. One account reveals a wager of 16 war canoes against 4,000 wild pigs. Other stories tell of a surfer who lost his wife in a surfing contest. No mention is made of the winner in this particular event. There is evidence of a general neglect of duties and families when surf was running high, a practice that still continues today. The greatest surfers were chiefs and kings. Their boards, called olo, were 14 to 18 feet long and weighed approximately 115 pounds. They were made of wili wood, a light wood Hawaiian type of balsa difficult to obtain. It was reserved for the chiefs. A heavier wood of koa was passed off on those of lesser rank. Contests usually consisted of several heats and were the type of surf race from an outside point to shore or a marked buoy. The making of a surfboard was marked by ritual. Everything had to be done according to the kahuna, or witch doctor. First, a tree was selected and then a red fish called kumu placed in its trunk. The tree was cut down and a hole dug at its root. The fish was placed in the hole as an offering and prayers made to the gods for good surfing on the surfboard to be. It was roughly cut out, carried to a canoe shed for final shaping, and a stain concocted of roots, bark, and burned nuts applied. This was followed by mud baths for filling cracks and other oils for final sealing. The kahuna was an important man in surfing too. It was his efforts with special chant, while whipping the water with a vine, that made the surf rise. The kahuna was a smart fellow who spotted the surf signs that precede a big sea in Waikiki. At the end of the 19th century, only a few small boards were being ridden in Hawaii. But early in the new century, the boards began to get longer, and surfers once again tackled the outside combers of Waikiki. To help repopularize the sport of surfing there, Alexander Hume Ford founded the Outrigger Canoe Club in 1908. Duke Kahanamoku, one of surfing's most famous pioneers, began his great surfing career around this time, and it was through his travels that the sport reached Australia in 1912. He was also a great contributor to the development of surfing in California. Although it was George Freeth who rode the first surfboard in Redondo Beach in 1907, surfing was introduced to California as a tourist attraction. The sport moved slowly, with most of the participants he-men strong enough to carry the 100-pound boards. A real pioneer in the development of the modern surfboard was a man named Bob Simmons. When a student at the California Institute of Technology, those who knew him said he had a great future. He turned it all to the surf. Injured in a bicycle accident and warned to exercise his left arm constantly to avoid amputation, Simmons became interested in surfing through a fellow patient at the hospital. From 1934 on, Simmons roamed the coast of California and Hawaii, living on cottage cheese canned peaches, and soybeans, shaping an occasional surfboard and finding out more about the surf and surf spots than any man of his day. His arm withered, he detested the heavy surfboards then being ridden. In the early 40s, he and several others experimented with balsa wood and varnish. Later, Simmons added fiberglass and even produced a lightweight styrofoam surfboard. His balsa wood fiberglass design caught on in the late 40s, replacing the combinations of redwood and balsa. The commercial potential of foam did not appeal to the surfboard manufacturers until the mid-50s, with the perfection of polyurethane foam. Bob Simmons had countless charts and maps and was always theorizing on the possibility of surf at some remote spot in the world. He felt that Australia, Peru, and Hawaii must have big waves, and in the early 50s he made a trip to Hawaii. He went directly to Sunset Beach and became the first man consistently to ride the huge sunset surf. Simmons never got to Australia or Peru. In September 1954, he disappeared in a big surf at Wind and Sea in La Jolla, California. His body washed up a few days later. No one saw it happen, and the man who contributed his life to surfing was claimed by his love, the surf. 3. Waves. Each wave has a character of its own. Waves are caused by winds, and their shape is dependent on the ocean bottom, shore reefs, and sandbars, various obstructions, and, of course, the distance that the waves travel. Waves coming from far distant storms approach in long, even lines, and unless disturbed by local weather conditions, reach their destination in the same beautiful lines. These long lines are ideal for riding over the many surfing reefs located throughout the world. The stone or rock reefs are eons old, deposited by ice age glaciers or volcanic eruptions. Some are coral formed by microscopic sea life. The reef is good for surfing when an underwater point extends out beyond the main body of the rock formation, or the reef is formed in such a way that the waves will peel off or break from the center out, not crashing down in one long line. Another type of wave that is excellent for riding is the peak surf or narrow hump that breaks and spreads from the center. This wave can be ridden on both reefs and beach. The beach breaks are very fast, and only occasionally does the rider get a long slide without running into the soup or whitewater. The peak or hump surf might be the product of broken lines, bottom refraction, or may possibly be whipped up by local wind condition. There are numerous novelty surf spots where surfing waves have been created inadvertently by works of man. In Hawaii, Ala Moana is the product of a dredged boat channel, and what several years ago was a mile-long crusher is now a perfect surfing wave breaking along the diagonal man-made channel. In California, numerous breakwaters or jetties lie in the path of big swells. The waves bank off the walls of stone and move in an opposite course towards the beach. Usually, these waves come off the breakwaters in fast-moving peaks excellent for surfing. The pier is a California favorite, rideable waves being caused by the deep spots around the pilings. In the same way as when you stand on the shore and a receding breaker eats the sand away from around your feet, holes are formed around the pilings and cause waves to back off or not break when they reach the pier. Thus, a rider can rocket into the pier, knowing full well that the wave usually will diminish and lose its break or power beneath the pilings. However, each pier has its wave size limit, determined in most part by the tides. Other novelty surfs include the aircraft carrier surf of Virginia Beach. On seeing a passing carrier, surfers leap into the water and wait the 5 to 8 foot peaks caused by the moving ship. In Australia, with a huge swell and strong east wind, waves come through the entrance to the Sydney Harbour and smash up against an exposed harbour cliff. They roll back off the cliff and across the harbour into a small cove, Shark Cove, where they are greeted by eager Sydney surfers. This spot, also known as Nielsen Park, is adorned with ragged shark nets, capable of stopping nothing but the surfer. The waves take the surfer from Shark Point through the shark net. Those slow at pulling out may find themselves entwined in the steel and rope mesh. A wave is not ridden straight off or straight toward shore, but across the face or wall, as near parallel to shore as possible, and just ahead of the breaking part of the wave. For this reason, a line surf peeling off from the center is by far the best type of wave to ride. These waves come from far distant storms and seem to come at certain times of the year. The Australian winter cyclones kick up giant bombora surf during these months of May, June, and July. Their consistent southerly winds during February, March, and April give them their year's best surfing time. In Hawaii, the tremendous North Pacific storms boom their giant swells directly down to the north shores of the Hawaiian island chain. It's these North Pacific storms that cause the 20 to 30-foot surf, usually most consistent in December and January. The California coast is also the recipient of swells from these winter storms. They move down the California coast, wrapping into various surf spots, with usually about half the size of the same swell in Hawaii. California's summer surf begins as early as March and ranges through October. Occasionally, the storms move in on California coast, leaving considerable destruction and damage. In September of 1939, California had its big one. This is the only tropical storm recorded that caused wave and wind damage in the Southern California coastal area. It was first sighted off of Central America on September 15th. It traveled west-northwest at about 200 miles per day until on or about the 20th. It commenced to curve northward and then moved up along the coast of Baja California. Early September 22nd, winds in the northwest quadrant of the storm were 500 to 1,000 miles from the Southern California area. Subsequently, the storm moved toward the north and dissipated near Santa Monica early on the 25th. This storm was one of the worst from the standpoint of winds, and it certainly was the worst from the standpoint of waves that has ever occurred in the Southern California area during the 58 years of records and maps examined. The U.S. aircraft carriers Enterprise and Lexington obtained hourly records of the weather information in the area of Los Angeles and Long Beach Outer Harbor, and the maximum wind recorded by them was 50 knots. The wave observations were given only according to the state of sea classifications. One of the carriers recorded that the waves had reached the 20-foot range. The other indicated 20 to 40-foot heights. Newspapers reported 65 lives lost at sea off Southern California, and coastal damage was estimated at greater than $1 million. Persons ashore estimated the swell heights at 30 feet, and ships at sea reported 45-foot waves at the Catalina Channel. At Point Mugu, floods and turbulency ripped away bridges and roads. The seas tore away half of San Clemente's 1,200-foot-long pier. Newport and Balboa Pier centers collapsed. The storm loosened foundations of many houses along the coast, particularly at Alamitos Bay and Sunset Beach. At Long Beach, considerable damage was done to the outer breakwater where the stones above mean sea level that weighed 2 to 20 tons were dislodged. A few surfers were on hand to ride the surf, and although some claim that the days preceding the hurricane brought outstanding surf, most agree that it got pretty wild and stormy toward the end. Leroy Granis rode Malibu on the Sunday that the hurricane hit, paddling out in the morning in 12-foot surf. By early afternoon, when it blew out, Granis and several other surfers were riding waves up to 18 feet, pulling out at the end of the Malibu Pier. One of the big winter swells to hit California coast came at a time when California surfers could be counted on one hand. In January of 1915, a storm developed about 600 miles north of Hawaii. Early on the 24th, it was a well-developed frontal system and became occluded by January 25th. It moved almost due east, and its low-pressure center entered Northern California on the 28th. Its wind field stretched far to the south and began to produce waves on the 28th, which reached Southern California late on the 29th and early on the 30th. On the coast itself, winds were from the southeast on the 29th and veered to the west and west-northwest by the 30th. Newspapers stated that ships arriving at Los Angeles from the north had reported heavy seas which greatly delayed them. By late January 28th, a howling gale was blowing from the southwest at Los Angeles Harbor. Streets were torn up and beach houses were reported in danger at Newport Beach. High surf existed all the way from Santa Monica Bay to Newport Beach, resulting in 250,000 to 500,000 estimated damage to coastal property. Imagine what a toll would be today with our present heavy coastal development. Heavy seas, which were breaking far out with great force, wrecked the pier extension at Venice early on the 30th. The outer 2,000 feet of the 4,000-foot-long El Segundo Wharf were destroyed, after which it was rebuilt to its present 2,200-foot length. Of the recent winter swells, January of 1953 and January of 1958 produced some of the biggest surf ridden. In 1953, Californians took advantage of the January 10th swell that averaged between 15 and 20 feet. In 1958, a fantastic million-square-mile storm churned through the whole North Pacific. While the Northern California area was battered by 20-foot-plus surf and Southern California by 15-foot waves, Hawaii received the brunt of the swell. On January 13, 1958, the surf rose from a few feet to approximately 40 to 50 feet on the North Shore. It is difficult to determine exactly how big these waves were because they were far beyond the riding point. Kilauea Lighthouse on the island of Kauai reported a ground swell of 29 feet. The surf at Makaha was ridden on January 13th and 14th by a handful of surfers. The size of the big waves was 25 to 30 feet, some of the biggest surf ever ridden. This giant surf is the exception rather than the rule. In Southern California, for example, the average wave height has been estimated at somewhere around 3.5 feet. Just how big waves will get depends on three things. First, how strong the wind is blowing. Second, how long has it been blowing? And third, the extent of open water across which the wind has blown, called fetch. Waves close together or with close interval cannot get very big, just as waves on a narrow bay, no matter how hard the wind may blow, cannot build up to more than a few feet in height. The biggest waves have been recorded on the open sea where the winds may blow over a fetch of thousands of miles. The stories of the ninth wave of a given set of waves being the biggest are strictly myths. But all big wave stories are not myths. One story reported by Lieutenant Commander R.P. Whitemarsh in the Proceedings of the U.S. Naval Institute is considered a wave story topper. In 1933, the tanker Ramapo, journeying from Manila to San Diego, ran into giant swells, apparently from a storm thousands of miles away. That night, in the moonlight, a giant wave was spotted at a level above the mainmast crow's nest. Commander Whitemarsh estimated the wave height at 112 feet. At Tillamook Rock, Oregon, a 135-pound boulder was tossed through the roof of the lighthouse keeper's house, 139 feet above the water. The most dreaded of all waves are the so-called tidal waves, or tsunami, which are giant tide surges caused by disturbances under the sea, such as earthquakes or volcanic eruptions. They cross the sea many times unnoticed at the rate of some 450 miles per hour. In past years, Japan has received the brunt of these tidal waves, having had 15 of them since 1596. In 1896, a destructive giant caused the deaths of 27,122 people in Japan. Krakatoa, an East Indian island volcano, exploded in 1883, causing a tidal wave that killed 36,380 people and wiped out numerous villages on neighboring islands. Krakatoa's tidal wave went all the way around the world, even being recorded in the English Channel. 4. The hot doggers. A type of riding that has gained great popularity in the last few years with the perfection of the small, lightweight surfboard has been termed hot dogging. At first, the term meant a showboat, someone with a bag of tricks intending on wowing the spectators with a flamboyant display of footwork, arm-waving, arches, and whatever else the rider may come up with. To some, this is still hot dogging, but to a major portion of the small surf riders, hot dogging has taken on a very functional meaning to get the most out of the wave, to obtain the greatest possible speed, and to stay in the most critical part of the wave, the curl, hook, tube, tunnel, pipe, etc. This takes balance, ability, and good judgment, and the better surfer will cut back or turn back when the wave presents a momentary flat spot or appears to be dying out. He cuts back into the curl, waiting for the wave to again build up in front of him. When the wave builds, the surfer then goes again, trying to reach a maximum speed immediately. This is done by trimming or putting the board on the part of the wave that will give the most possible speed, possibly by walking to the nose or front of the board. Standing on the nose of the board in the curl is difficult and takes good judgment. The surfer must be able to determine when to backpedal or step backward, or he will purl, causing the nose of his board to go underwater and abruptly end his ride. The present style of hot dogging originated in Hawaii with the finless hot curl board. and such riders as Scooter Boy and Rebet Kakai perfected in California on the balsa wood chip or Malibu-type board during the late 40s and early 50s. Matt Kevlin was one of the first Californians to really exploit this type of riding. Other great names in hot dogging field have included the Hawaiian brothers Bobby, Ronald, and Raymond Patterson, Malibu's Mickey Dora, Mickey Minoz, and two of the greats in the 50s, Dewey Weber and Phil Edwards. In recent years, the number of competent hot doggers seems to double with each swell. Each year, a few new names pop up. They surf brilliantly and then settle back to join the mass of excellent hot doggers that roam the coast. Some of the hot doggers' positions are completely useless and prove only one point, that at the moment the surfer is in complete domination of the curl. Mickey Minoz was the creator of a number of such hot dog positions, named after several of the bullfighters, Adornio terms. Mickey created the Misterioso, El Spontaneo, El Telefono, and his hunchback Quasimodo. Getting away with a stunt like this in the curl of a wave testifies to the surfer's control and domination of the wave at the moment. The majority of girl surfers aim at becoming hot doggers. Very few are interested in tackling the big surf. A few girls have performed at a level far beyond what was believed possible a few years ago. The film Gidget inspired a great many girls to turn from surf and surfer watchers to participating surfers. Even though the Hollywood treatment was pure corn, as most Hollywood surfing efforts are, the film did some good in portraying the girl as a part of surfing. Since that movie, the female level of performance has risen steadily, and today girls are almost universally accepted and respected in the sport. 5. The heavies. Big waves present a different story. Very little hot dogging goes on in waves over 15 feet. In the surf over 20 feet, the word is go. Go in one direction and with one purpose, to escape being smothered by tons of whitewater and to escape the momentary panic as the pile-driving force tears you from the board and churns you downward. The secret of survival in giant surf is experience and relaxation in the wipeout. To fight in the early seconds of a wipeout is futile. You only burn up valuable oxygen. You usually have the wind knocked out of you with the initial impact. The normal intervals of waves in a big surf is somewhere between 13 and 19 seconds. Assuming that you have made some shoreward progress, possibly underwater, you must still make it to the surface in a matter of 20 seconds or less, or the next mountain of whitewater may roll over you. Many a surfer has popped up gasping and out of breath, only to find another wave almost on top of him. Although there have been numerous rescues, there have been few deaths due to surf size. There are amateur mountain climbers, but very few, when confronted with Mount Everest, would attempt to climb it. The same holds true with heavy surf. Although crowds increase, it's only a foolish few who tackle the big surf without skill, knowledge, and experience. Each year, the big surf is ridden by basically the same surfers, a few new ones appearing and a few older ones dropping from the picture. Sitting all alone on the board, you get the feeling that you're a little closer to the real force behind the mountains and the waves and a man. As giant humps move silently beneath you, you rise and fall, always searching the horizon for the swell or bluebird that may have your name on it. A set of waves comes, and it's at this stage the experienced rider will make his most important movements of positioning. You paddle to the point where you feel you can catch the approaching wave. Expert judgment will put you in a position allowing just enough time to paddle and stand before the wall hisses over, collapsing over the submerged reef. Your position should also be set up to provide you for your slide across the wall. A poor rider will usually situate himself too far out on the green, or flat part of the wave, or occasionally too far into the curl, thus ending his ride with a premature wipeout. Whether you paddle prone or on your knees depends on you. However, experts generally agree that there is more advantage to prone paddling in the big surf, less wind resistance, as well as a faster and smoother change to a standing position. A big wave drop is a breathtaking experience, as the wind rushing up the face of the wave seems to hold you back until you reach the point of a near freefall. Catapulting down the shimmering blue wall, you experience the same sensations as the first drop on a good roller coaster or shushing on skis down a giant mountain. The difference is that the tracks on a mountain are not coming down on top of you. A white avalanche thunders behind the surfer, and one mistake or unseen chop can spell quick finish to the ride. Should the takeoff be successful, There is always the problem of getting out at the end before the wave crashes down. If the wave merely dies out, the problem is easily solved by riding or turning over the back. If it steepens over a shallow reef or upon reaching the shore, the surfer must either straighten out and prepare to prone out or ride on the board in the broken whitewater, or he must bail out. Occasionally, a surfer can kick his board over the back of the wave, thus avoiding a swim or longer paddle. There's a great deal of dispute over the size of the big surf. Many overestimate and truly believe in their estimates. A great number of the more experienced surfers underestimate wave size and don't believe in their calls, but these have a purpose. Underestimating is done first to impress, second out of fear of overestimating and being ridiculed, and third out of habit. Actually, the best surf estimation method ever proposed was not in feet, but in units of fear. John Severson was a pioneering figure in the world of surfing, best known as the founder of Surfer magazine. A talented artist, filmmaker, and photographer, Severson played a crucial role in shaping the cultural and visual identity of modern surfing. His early films, including Surf Safari and Big Wednesday, captured the sport's essence and helped popularize it beyond coastal communities. In 1960, he launched Surfer magazine, transforming it from a small promotional booklet into the definitive publication for surfers worldwide. Through his artistic vision and deep connection to the ocean, Severson not only documented the sport, but also influenced its evolution, leaving an enduring legacy in surf culture. Well, thank you for listening along. I hope you enjoyed today's story. Until next time, keep your stoke high and your bottom turns tight, and I'll see you in the lineup.